Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, crumbling cathedral, the pillars of tradition shattered around you. What do you see? Friedrich Nietzsche saw the collapse of an entire moral order. His revolutionary ideas, his fierce critique of morality, his celebration of individuality, and his provocative concept of the Übermensch were not mere philosophical musings. They were blazing torches, lighting the path that modernism would follow. His defiance of inherited values and call for individuals to craft their own truths inspired writers and artists to shatter convention, to question reality itself, and to search for new, uncharted modes of human expression. Think of James Joyce's daring narrative experiments or T.S. Eliot's haunting portrayal of a spiritually desolate world. Nietzsche's fingerprints are everywhere, in the modernist obsession with subjectivity, fragmentation, and the relentless dismantling of norms. What happens when the very foundation of your beliefs crumbles? Nietzsche's philosophy tore down the moral and religious structures that had dominated Western thought for centuries, laying the groundwork for a radical new era. He didn't just chip away at the edges. He wielded a philosophical sledgehammer. His declaration that God is dead was no quiet whisper. It was an earthquake, a call to confront the terrifying freedom of a godless universe. Nietzsche's existential challenge became the heartbeat of modernism's rebellion against the rigid values of the 19th century. Walter Kaufmann, a leading Nietzschean scholar, reminds us that this bold critique reshaped moral philosophy and opened a door that modernist thinkers would eagerly walk through. Can you feel the ground shaking beneath your feet? That's the seismic force of Nietzsche's rejection of Christian morality, which he saw as suffocating life itself. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he declared, "God is dead," an explosive metaphor signaling the death of absolute values and the rise of a meaningless world. Enter nihilism, a terrifying abyss where all structures collapse. But Nietzsche was no mere harbinger of despair. He called for a radical reconstruction, where the will to power, the creative force of human potential, would forge new values. T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland reflects this cultural and spiritual desolation. Picture a barren world where myths and religious fragments lie scattered like broken shards of stained glass. Critics like Michael Levinson highlight how Eliot explores a post-moral wasteland, where meaning evaporates into the desert air. This haunting vision directly echoes Nietzsche's bleak yet electrifying philosophical terrain. What do we do when the stars no longer guide us? Nietzsche's concept of nihilism confronts the human condition stripped of all certainties. In this bleak landscape, modernist literature paints a picture of isolation and existential torment. Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis thrusts us into the nightmare of Gregor Samsa's grotesque transformation into an insect. Trapped, dehumanized, and lost, he becomes a symbol of Nietzsche's nihilism, a soul drowning in absurdity. Walter Sokol captures it perfectly. Gregor's fate reflects the powerless individual in a world where meaning has disintegrated into dust. But Nietzsche didn't leave us in despair. He offered a daring alternative, the Übermensch. Imagine a figure standing defiantly in the ruins, not as a victim, but as a creator, crafting new values with bold, unshakable resolve. The Übermensch is a symbol of overcoming, a testament to human will. James Joyce's Ulysses brings this idea to life in the most unexpected way. Leopold Bloom, an ordinary man navigating the complexity of a single day, embodies a quiet, everyday Übermensch. Joyce's use of stream of consciousness immerses us in Bloom's subjective world, revealing how even the mundane can become an act of personal mastery. Declan Keyberd sees Joyce as demonstrating modernism's power to transform fragmented reality through individual creativity, where the Übermensch exists not in grand gestures, but in the triumph of daily existence. Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra is not just a philosophical text. It's a thunderclap of poetry, prophecy, and searing critique. Zarathustra, the prophet at its heart, brings forth Nietzsche's most audacious ideas. Imagine the scene. A lone figure standing on a mountaintop, his voice rising against the winds of convention. This book became a cornerstone for modernism's rebellion against established norms and its restless quest for values in a world where the old religious and moral structures had crumbled into irrelevance. How did Nietzsche's daring concepts shape modernist giants like James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, and T.S. Eliot? Let's explore. God is dead. Can you hear the echo of that proclamation reverberating across a barren intellectual landscape? Nietzsche's famous metaphor captures the collapse of religious and moral absolutes in Western society. He blamed the Enlightenment and scientific progress for eroding faith and predicted an existential vacuum where humanity must create its own values. Modernist literature grasped this crisis with both hands. T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland paints a desolate world where religion no longer binds meaning together. Think of fragmented myths, hollow rituals, and a moral compass spinning aimlessly. Michael Levinson connects Nietzsche's dead god to Eliot's fragmented vision of a post-religious wasteland. Can we find coherence in the ruins, or is it all lost to the void? Nietzsche's ideas of morality, meaning, and subjectivity sparked a creative inferno for modernist writers and artists, offering them a path to reinvent art amid intellectual and cultural uncertainty. His existential crisis became their creative playground, a central theme that shaped daring new forms mirroring the fractured, alienated experience of modern life. If nihilism is a void, Nietzsche offers a challenge: fill it. His Übermensch, often misunderstood, symbolizes the individual who transcends moral conformity to forge new values. It's a call to courage, creativity, and boundless self-determination. James Joyce's Ulysses answers this call in the unlikeliest of heroes, Leopold Bloom. Is he a grand, godlike figure? Hardly. But in his ordinary labyrinthine day, Bloom's quiet independence reflects Nietzsche's will to create meaning amidst chaos. Joyce's fragmented storytelling and stream of consciousness reveal Bloom's inner triumphs, turning mundane moments into personal acts of power. Declan Caberd shows how this transforms the Übermensch into a relatable, everyday figure, conquering not with swords but with the mind. Imagine reliving every moment of your life, endlessly, without escape. Would you recoil, or would you rejoice? Nietzsche's concept of eternal return challenges us to embrace life fully, with no regrets, finding affirmation even in repetition. Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway resonates with this theme. Her stream of consciousness unfolds the cyclical nature of time, as Clarissa Dalloway experiences memories bleeding into the present. Woolf explores how past and present dance together, weaving identity through patterns that repeat but never exactly the same. Like Nietzsche, she invites us to find beauty and meaning within life's intricate loops. Nietzsche, the architect of modernism's intellectual rebellion, challenged a generation to demolish inherited structures and embrace uncertainty. His critique of morality and religion opened the floodgates for literary innovation, where truth splintered into a kaleidoscope of perspectives. Walter Kaufmann's analysis reminds us, Nietzsche's influence cannot be overstated. He became the philosophical father of a movement that found art in chaos, strength in fragmentation, and meaning in a world stripped of absolutes. Think of modernism not as a break, but as a bold reconstruction, a revolution Nietzsche lit with the spark of a single idea: question everything. Modernism, as a literary and artistic movement, emerged as a radical break from the rigid traditions and values of the 19th century. And standing at its intellectual core, Friedrich Nietzsche. His fiery critique of religion, morality, and social structures struck a powerful chord with writers and artists who sought to create fresh expressions in a world they experienced as fragmented and devoid of certainty. Nietzsche's philosophy laid the very groundwork for modernist rebellion, with its emphasis on shattering inherited norms and embracing subjectivity and individualism. What happens when the moral foundations of society collapse? Nietzsche's searing critique of Christian morality, his declaration that God is dead, ignited a philosophical revolution. He rejected the values of guilt, humility, and obedience, which he believed suffocated human creativity and freedom. Instead, he demanded a complete overthrow of these structures to make room for values forged by the individual. This rejection of old moralities became a rallying cry for modernist literature. T.S. Eliot's The Waste Land, 1922, stands as a towering testament to this disillusionment. Imagine a barren landscape strewn with fragments of shattered civilizations. Eliot's poem paints a picture of spiritual desolation after the devastation of World War I, where meaning has dissolved and only the ghosts of past beliefs remain. Michael Levinson highlights how Nietzsche's dead god haunts this wasteland, where Eliot's fragmented structure reflects the disintegration of cultural coherence. What can hold a world together when its moral glue has evaporated? Nietzsche's philosophy proclaimed, "Dare to be yourself." His fierce advocacy for individual freedom and subjective truth resonated deeply with modernist authors. He urged a break from the suffocating norms of society, challenging each person to shape their own identity and meaning. Modernist literature embraced this quest for individual perception, crafting narrative techniques that captured the chaotic, fluid nature of human thought. Think of James Joyce's stream of consciousness in Ulysses, 1922, where Leopold Bloom's mind leaps freely between sensations, memories, and wandering thoughts. Here, reality is not a static landscape, it's a swirling sea of subjective experience. Hugh Kenner described Ulysses as the ultimate modernist novel, one where truth is never objective but always refracted through the lens of individual perception. Reality, in Joyce's hands, is lived, not observed. Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, 1925, deepens this exploration. Woolf dissolves the boundaries of time, weaving past and present into a seamless tapestry of memory and thought. Her characters' minds, moving like rivers between past and present, reveal how subjective experience shapes every moment of life. In Woolf's vision, perception itself becomes art, a deeply personal, ever-shifting mosaic. But modernism didn't just challenge what stories told, it revolutionized how they were told. Nietzsche's call to dismantle rigid structures echoed in modernist experimentation with narrative form. Gone were the linear plots and moral certainties of 19th century realism. In their place came fragmentation, ambiguity, and open-ended exploration. James Joyce and Virginia Woolf rejected straightforward storytelling. In their works, beginnings and endings blur, moral lessons dissolve, and meaning splinters. This literary deconstruction mirrored Nietzsche's philosophical project: break down the old systems and build something new from the rubble. This embrace of complexity and refusal of closure defines modernism, transforming it into a movement of perpetual reinvention and intellectual daring. Modernism as a literary movement grew from these tremors of philosophical revolution. At its heart was Friedrich Nietzsche, whose radical ideas of nihilism, individualism, and the deconstruction of values reshaped the very concept of human existence. Alongside Nietzsche, modernism was shaped by the ripples of existentialism, Freudian psychoanalysis, and Einstein's theory of relativity, each challenging traditional views of reality, identity, and truth. What happens when the center no longer holds? Nietzsche's idea of nihilism, a world where traditional values have disintegrated, leaving humanity adrift in a universe without inherent meaning, was a thunderclap that echoed through modernist literature. God is dead, Nietzsche declared, confronting us with a terrifying freedom, a world without divine authority or absolute moral truths. This existential crisis, what do we do when the sacred becomes hollow, drove many modernist writers to explore alienation and the struggle to find purpose amid chaos. Consider T.S. Eliot's The Waste Land, a kaleidoscopic vision of spiritual desolation after World War I. Picture a barren wasteland of fragmented voices and broken images, where civilization itself lies in ruins. Eliot's vision reflects Nietzsche's pronouncement, a shattered world where myths and faiths have lost their meaning. In The Burial of the Dead, the unreal city teems with figures who, like the spiritually dead, wander disconnected, empty, and unable to grasp transcendence. Can we find coherence where even belief itself has turned to dust? Is truth fixed, or does it shift with the winds of human perception? Nietzsche shattered the notion of objective truth, insisting that truth is a construction, an interpretation molded by individual experience. This radical idea profoundly influenced modernist experimentation with reality. Writers like James Joyce and Virginia Woolf turned away from objective storytelling, creating instead fluid, fragmented worlds where truth is as unstable as human thought. In Ulysses, Joyce invites us into the labyrinth of Leopold Bloom's mind. His thoughts swirl, leap, and fragment in a narrative stream of consciousness that breaks the boundaries of traditional storytelling. Reality in Joyce's world is subjective, shaped by the inner flow of memories and sensations. Hugh Kenner calls this the ultimate modernist gesture, truth as a shifting, living process, never fixed, always refracted through the human soul. Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway offers a parallel journey. Her narrative drifts seamlessly between past and present, memory and perception. Time in Woolf's hands is no linear thread. It's a swirling current of experience, subjective and deeply personal. Woolf herself, in her essay Modern Fiction, 1925, famously wrote, "Life is not a series of gig lamps symmetrically arranged. Life is a luminous halo, a semi-transparent envelope surrounding us from the beginning of consciousness to the end." Nietzsche's vision of deconstructing rigid systems wasn't confined to philosophy. It reverberated in the very architecture of modernist narrative. The linear plot lines and moral certainties of 19th century realism gave way to fragmented, open-ended explorations. Modernist writers broke down form itself, reflecting the fractured, multifaceted nature of human experience. James Joyce and Virginia Woolf dismantled the conventional, replacing it with experimental forms that mirrored Nietzsche's philosophical dismantling of values. Stories no longer followed tidy arcs. Instead, they meandered through the chaotic labyrinth of subjective consciousness. This radical break from tradition wasn't just literary. It was a revolution in how we see and construct meaning in a world of perpetual flux. Here in Modernism in World Literature, our journey through the groundbreaking ideas shaping modernist thought is far from over. In our next lesson, we'll dive into the fascinating world of Sigmund Freud and psychoanalysis. How did Freud's theories of the unconscious mind, repressed desires, and dream interpretation revolutionize the way modernist writers approached human identity and narrative form? What impact did his concepts of das Es, das Ich, and das Über-Ich have on the fragmented, introspective characters populating the pages of modernist fiction? Together, we'll explore these questions and uncover how psychoanalysis provided a new lens for interpreting the complexities of human experience in literature. Be sure to subscribe to the Academy of History and Culture to stay updated on upcoming lessons and resources. Thank you for engaging with today's session. I look forward to seeing you next time as we continue this exciting exploration of modernist literature and its philosophical roots.